is back from recess. Last night when we left off, we were at Speaker Judith Wanpat's amendment. There was much discussion on the floor, and there was an opposition. And at this time, if anybody else wants to speak before I ask the author to close on her amendment. Anybody else? If not, Speaker Wanpat. Speaker Wanpat, you are recognized on the on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The amendment I had, and I know there was some discussion on it, was that on Section 5 was to actually delete Section 5 in its entirety. And I know there were some questions originally in terms of whether, as using the example of the ITC building, that it was assumed that it is under CLTC, and we had checked on it and found out that it is still under GITA, and it will be in the hands of GITA for about 40 more years before it's actually turned over to ITC. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone have an understanding of exactly how then, if the choice was, of course, placing the language in because of what of ITC as an example of it, is that it is not. And but more importantly, I think the primary focus here is to let everyone know is that we try very much to keep the integrity of the original law that created the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and what the spirit of the law is. This particular section veers away from it. As a matter of fact, then it actually changes what is in the original law. And I would think that rather than put this in, that language somehow be set that if there should be a reason to do this, that then it comes to this body rather than, and not, well, how should I say it? I didn't give that much thought, but I would prefer that we don't change what's in the original intent of the law itself, and this particular section does that. And I'm afraid that once we start to make major changes in the law, when rules and regulations really are matters in which, of course, we set guidelines of who, what, when, and where type of thing, but to the point where it will not start to deteriorate the true intent and the spirit of the law when we consider what the Chamorro Land Trust is all about. That it's we want to always protect that it would always be for our native inhabitants. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, because there has been an objection, all those in favor of Speaker Wanpat's amendment, please. Yes, to delete all of Section 5. Lines, page 11, right? Um, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-second recess. This legislature is back from recess. All those in favor of the Speaker's amendment, please signify by raising your hand. The amendment to delete Section 5, there has been an objection, so all those in favor of the deletion of Section 5, I'd ask that you raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Had 5 votes, motion fails. Speaker Wampat, you do still have the floor on the main motion. With that, anybody else wishing to speak on the main motion on Bill 175? Anybody else wishing to speak? We are now, are there any more amendments? Clerk, is there any more amendments? Yes. Does anybody else wish to speak on the main motion? No? If not, Senator Espaldon, did you wish to speak on the main motion? If not, thank you, Senator Espaldon. I will have the author of the legislation, Senator Tom Adams. You may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I just make my brief closing remarks, I would just like to proffer one amendment, and it's really more of a technical correction. On page 3, section 3, on line 25, it makes reference there to 21 GCA section 75101D. That should be a section 75105D.
D.
D as in Delta.
Okay. Okay, on that motion, are there any objections? No objections? Motion carries. Senator Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I appreciate all the discussion and the input that was made to make Bill 175 a better, certainly a better document. And while I would be the first to admit that, we could probably work on this until the end of this legislature and we still wouldn't have that perfect bill, I think we need to move forward as best as we can. I think some of the amendments that had passed certainly added to making this a better bill, and I feel comfortable enough that we can move forward without giving away the store, but still be able to generate the kind of revenues that are necessary to be able to do really the fundamental work of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and that is to be able to accomplish the preliminaries in surveying the properties, so that we can get it ready to be distributed, and also to be able to put in the infrastructure so that the people, the Chamorros who ultimately will take possession of that land, to be able to build their homes and to be able to start their agricultural activities, will have the infrastructure necessary to be able to at least achieve a minimum standard quality of life And in addition to that, to be able to protect the aquifer over which much of this land exists. And so I've always believed that, a bill, once it's enacted into law, it's not one of those never look back again. I think it should be treated as a living document, and as more information comes forward, then we go in and we make the necessary amendments to be able to make the adjustments so that we get closer to what would really be truly a good piece of legislation. Not saying that Bill 175 is not good enough to move forward. So I certainly would urge my colleagues to favorably consider the passage of Bill 175 and put it out there so that then we can start developing the situation and hopefully get closer to our goals and our objectives of the Chamorro Land Trust. Thank you very much.
On the motion to put in the voting file without any objection, motion carries. We are now on Bill 181-33. Senator Tom Matta, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to accept Bill 181-33 COR as substituted by the author, and to place it into the third reading file, and I'd like to discuss it.
Oh, that would be to place on the third reading.
Yes.
Okay.
You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, first of all, the introduction of this bill, I think, is very timely in view of the fact that in just several more weeks, on November 11th, we will be observing Veterans Day, the day that is set aside for us to recognize the contributions of our veterans to our country in securing our freedoms. What Bill 181 does is it does two things. One, it provides clarity to what this legislature has done previously in terms of at least giving some consideration to our veterans in terms of waiving the fees for their driver's license and for their vehicle registration. And not just for the veterans themselves, but also those individuals, for example, the surviving spouses or the legal guardians of veterans who have been rated as being 100% disabled, and for the widows who lost their widows and widowers who lost their spouses as a result of engagement during conflict in a hostile area. And so the clarity that this bill does is it actually puts this waiver language in the appropriate part of the legislation, because although we had passed these provisions back in the 31st legislature, it was codified and it was placed in a section of the law which dealt with personnel and civil service commissions. And so as a result, Revenue and Tax wasn't aware, nor are many of the veterans weren't really aware of these fee waiver benefits that we were extending to these individuals. The second thing that Bill 181 does is it recognizes a certain group of veterans who, I guess you could say, did just a bit more than what most veterans have done while in service to their country. And these are the individuals who are recipients of the nation's 4 highest medals of valor. And those 4 medals is the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, and the Bronze Medal with V device. Now, these medals are awarded to those veterans who, during combat action in the field, basically went over and above putting their lives at greater risk probably than most others that were with them in the unit out in the field. Maybe a good example is in contrast, to the individuals who basically hunkered down in their foxholes waiting for things to kind of settle down and then be able to continue on with the offensive or whatever. These were the individuals who received these medals of valor, were the ones who would grab the bag of hand grenades and charge a machine gun nest to neutralize it, which basically contributed to saving the lives of many of the other soldiers in the unit. And this is not to take away anything from what other soldiers in the unit did, but it does give them that recognition, and that's why they were awarded these medals of valor. And then there's the other medal that's provided for when a soldier actually gets wounded while in combat, and that's the Purple Heart. So many of the individuals who have been awarded, the Medal of Honor, which I'm not aware of anyone who's here on Guam right now. The Distinguished Service Cross, I think I'm aware of 2 that are here on island. The Silver Cross or the Silver Star. I'm not fully aware of the number, but most of these individuals and those who receive the Bronze Star with the V device, most of these individuals very likely were also wounded during that hostile action and were awarded the Purple Heart. So the new section then that provides is that we will waive the vehicle registration fee for these recipients of these medals of valor. Now, I was able to get information from the Veterans Affairs Office and asked, how many are we possibly talking about? Let's say just the recipients of the Purple Heart. And the number I got was that probably it's about 200. So, we're not talking about running the coffers, the government dry. There's really just a handful of them. And just to give you an example, since the time that we've actually extended the benefits, just for the waiver of the driver's license fee, we've heard numbers that there's probably around 20,000 veterans. That includes retirees, active duty, and all that, that are living here on Guam. Probably on the average, there's only about 2,000 of them that take advantage of these fee waiver benefits. So again, the economic impact is not, I don't believe, going to be so great. But even with that, I would say, when they went off to war, they didn't say, they went and they served our country, and I think that in extending this benefit to them, certainly I don't think the economic impact is going to be great enough to say that no, they don't deserve it. So I ask my colleagues to favorably consider this, and I hope that when this bill passes, if it passes, that the governor will enact it in time so that it will be available by Veterans Day on November 11th. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Good morning to you and our fellow colleagues. I too would like to stand up in support of this particular measure, recognizing individuals who have received any one of the 4 top military awards and valor for combat activities. Madam Speaker, when we talk about our people making sacrifices, right now we have approximately 75 individuals who are venturing into combat activities. They deployed about 2 weeks ago. And I certainly hope that we continue to keep them in our prayers. But I bring that up because the National Guard and the Reserve on a continuous basis continue to deploy. And this, I believe, brings full circle in terms of the overall contribution that these individuals, the recipients of these awards, would be given an additional benefit on behalf of the people of Guam. But I want to also highlight, Madam Speaker, that the people of Guam, like was mentioned by the chair of the Veterans Committee, on an annual basis, he mentioned of over 2,000 plus veterans that now are taking advantage of the driver's license privilege. And what it is it waives, if you present your DD-214 or your veteran's card, that for when you acquire a driver's license, you have the benefit on behalf of the people of Guam to be able to have your fees waived. And that's in gratitude to all of our veterans who have served and who are still serving our island community. And I stand here just so that I can once again reiterate that this community has not only been extremely patriotic, not only do we have family members in the military, not only do we have numerous veterans on island, I believe the chairman mentioned over 20,000 is a number that has been thrown out there on a regular basis. But we also, as an island community, show our gratitude through some of these benefits that are granted to our veterans. And one of them is what we are proposing here and proposing to expand and to include all of the recipients of the 4 major awards, combat awards that are given to any of our veterans here in Guam, but also the contribution that our veterans continue to receive by virtue of the driver's license fees being waived, and there are numerous other benefits that have been provided to our veterans. And I just want to thank the people of Guam through this legislative body for recognizing the contributions that our veterans have provided in preserving freedom over the years and who continue to provide to this very day. So I stand in support of this legislation, and I thank the sponsor for addressing this and including other members who have been so recognized by these awards. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, does anyone would like to speak on 181-33? Senator Tony Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of Bill 181-33. And it was at the public hearing where Sergeant Major Martin Manglonia had brought up the issue of including the additional recognition of those who have had the top awards of the military, different military services, which is the Navy Cross, the Coast Guard Cross, Silver Star, the Bronze Star. And it just goes to show that we continue to recognize not only those that have given the ultimate sacrifice, which is fully recognizable, but we also wanted to ensure that we recognize those that the silent individuals who continue to be active in the community, continue to be active in the different branches of service, and who continue to be patriots in our nation and on our island. And I think this is just a small token of our appreciation, the people of Guam's appreciation for all that they do and all that they continue to do. And I'd like to thank the author for including these different recognitions, and hopefully that we'll be able to get our body's full support in this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. Senator Underwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, too, stand in full support of Bill number 181-33. And I really want to thank the author for this bill, especially as it includes for Gold Star widows, widowers, and parents, and for recipients of medals or valor or the Purple Heart Medal. And I want to underscore widows, widowers, and parents. A lot of times, we don't realize that when our men and women in uniform are called to duty, they become just numbers, and we have a heart for them. But, you know, Madam Speaker, as a parent of an individual who is in active duty and has been sent to Iraq and Afghanistan, the emotional trauma that the family members, the parents and the widowers of these heroes that we have did not just occur when they have lost their loved ones, but it actually had started from the time that they had accepted, they had stepped up to defend our country and to be a member of our armed forces. So I just want to thank the author for including the widows and the parents, because these are the individuals that I know had really also suffered the loss, but it actually started at the time that their loved ones had enlisted for duty. So I thank you again, Madam Speaker, for just giving me the opportunity to support this bill.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, there being none, Senator Ada, you want to close? You want to send it down?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I certainly appreciate the comments that have been made. And Madam Speaker, before I close, I would like to add on as sponsors to the bill the two other veterans that sit in this hall, and I would like to add Senator Uggan and Senator Tony Ada. And I would also like to go ahead and add additionally as co-sponsors parents who have members in their immediate family who are either veterans or are serving, and that's Senator Narissa Underwood and Senator Mary Torres. And Senator Tina Barnes. So I would like to add Senator Underwood, Senator Torres, and Senator Tina Barnes as co-sponsors.
On that motion, no objections, so ordered. And they are Uggan, Ada, Underwood, Torres, and Barnes. So on the motion then to send 181 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senator. Bill number 146-33, Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much for recognizing in regards to the placement of Bill 146-33, COR. I move to have this particular legislation, Madam Speaker, placed in the third reading file.
You may proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is just for the information of the public, our people out there in the community. I'll just read a brief excerpt from the title, and it's relative to the establishment of a War on Terror Fallen Heroes Monument on the Adelup Parade Field in the Ricardo J. Bordallo Governor's Complex at Adelup, and to repeal Public Law 32-46. And let me just provide a little bit of history, Madam Speaker, if I may. Public Law 32-46 is a existing law that authorizes the use of a 20 feet by 20 feet plot of property at Skinner's Plaza, specifically for the Fallen Heroes Monument. And earlier this year, a number of the foundation members, because of the construction of the museum, they were not able to get access to the site that was being proposed for them to use that plot of property over at the plaza. When the construction opened up a bid and they were able to allow some of the family members to visibly see the area that was allocated specifically for the monument, a number of the family members came forward and requested that this particular public law 32-46 be revisited and that a plot, similar plot, over at the Governor Ricardo J. Bordalio's complex be provided for the Fallen Heroes Monument. So that is what we have here today, Madam Speaker, is deleting Public Law 32-46 and allowing for the property that was identified in that existing law, the similar size, 20 feet by 20 feet, to be relocated over to the Ricardo Bordalio Governor's Complex field. Just to provide additional history, Madam Speaker, when this was brought to the attention of my office, what we did was we communicated with Parks and Rec, because they're the government entity that's responsible for maintaining that particular field. And they recommended that we communicate directly with the governor, because that's where the seat of the governor's office is situated. We communicated with the governor's office, and both Parks and Rec and the governor's office consented to the concept of having the Fallen Heroes Monument constructed at the Bordalio field just in front of the governor's office. So based on that, based on the communication, we formulated this legislation. We identified exactly, or the family members identified exactly where they would like this particular monument to be situated. As you're facing Adelup, on the right side of the field, they've identified right towards the corner an area of 20 feet by 20 feet, which would be consistent with what is being proposed here, and they would be able to construct the monument there. I want to thank the family members, Madam Speaker, when Vice Speaker Cruz had the public hearing on this particular measure. And I want to thank them for coming forward and testifying in support of this, but also on a personal note, for reminding me there at the public hearing of the ultimate sacrifice that their loved one, whether it be a spouse, whether it be a son, whether it be a daughter, whether it be a father or a mother, what the ultimate sacrifice that was paid by their loved ones during either the Persian Gulf, during Operation Iraqi Freedom, or Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan. And I just want to thank them again. It brought back emotions, Madam Speaker, primarily because not only having had the opportunity to serve in combat, but I'm one of the parents who just recently, begrudgingly with my wife to send both, but who recently sent or allowed our two boys to venture and to deploy over the course of the next 7 months. So it really was a very emotional time for me during the course of the public hearing. It was a reminder of what these men and women have paid as an ultimate sacrifice. But taking it a little further, Madam Speaker, this monument would be a tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, but I believe it would also serve a dual purpose. And that is to allow the family members, and this is a comment that was shared by one of the family members, it would allow the family members and their loved ones who are still alive to be able to visit that monument and to recall and to remember the service that their loved ones provided. And that's not to say that they don't think about it every single day, Madam Speaker, but this would be our way of our local community and our government and the people of Guam giving back for the service that these individuals have provided. So I ask, Madam Speaker, for not only for your support, your endorsement, our colleagues to endorse this, but I also ask the people of Guam to also endorse this and continue to pray for the loved ones. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. Can we just take a 10-second recess? The legislature is back in session. Oh, the legislature is back in session. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the motion? There. Oh, Senator Underwood, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of this bill, of Bill 146-33, for the same reason that I had spoken about earlier, that I was actually present during the public hearing, and the emotional pain that the parents, the spouses of our fallen heroes continue to suffer is immeasurable. And so to the extent that they have actually requested for this to be relocated and to be put up, I think that that's the very least that we can do to pay tribute and to provide support for the survivors. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I also ask our colleagues to support 146-33.
You're welcome, Senator. Senator Munya-Barnes, you're recognized.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker, and Manana Situus, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of Bill 146-33 COR, and again to establish the War on Terror Fallen Heroes Monument at the Adelup Parade Field in the Ricardo J. Bordalio Governor's Complex here in Anigua at Adelup. I want to say, Madam Speaker, that even in the 32nd Guam Legislature, when this was approved, it had an overwhelming support, and based on the good author and his explanation on why it has been moved, I just want to say that it is important that we follow through on our commitment, and that this is a very, very good piece of legislation to support our families and those who need to continue to remember their loved fallen heroes. I just want to say that I stand and rise in full support of this legislation, and I also ask my colleagues to please consider this legislation, and that we have unanimous support on this one. And thank Senator Uggan for introducing this legislation on behalf of the community. Situus Masi.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion for 146, anyone who would like to speak on 146? Senator Uggan, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move for yourself to be co-sponsor, and then in the sequence as presented by Senator Tom Atta, yourself, Senator Tom Atta, and those who have served as a veteran in the military, or those who have family members, in that particular sequence that was previously provided by the good chairman.
Okay, in the
Please,
same
Madam
order
Speaker.
that was in the previous bill then.
That's correct.
Okay, on that motion then, without any objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to also close by thanking my colleagues for placing this particular legislation on the agenda and asking them again for their support. I know that you had brought up a concern as part of our sideline conversation in regards to how the ceremony will be carried out once this monument is constructed. And I certainly will bring that to the attention of the Fallen Heroes Foundation members, as well as to the officials over at the governor's office, and see how they can coordinate that so that it does not perhaps add too much time to the Veterans Day ceremony. So I will share that with you, because just for the information of the public, the speaker was mentioning or questioning how the ceremony would proceed in light of having now the Fallen Heroes Monument and then the Iwo Jima monument that's there presently, because the releasing of the birds have traditionally been released right in front of the Iwo Jima monument there, the statue. So yes, I will share that information. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and please, Senators, if we can get your endorsement of this legislation. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion then to send 146 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Moving along, bill number 153-33, Senator Uggan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm going to just very briefly make some general comments as it applies to the next four additional legislation that would appropriate funds. But before I do that, I'd like to move for the placement of Bill number 153-33 LS into third reading file, please, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Senator, and you may proceed then if you're going to discuss it.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask our colleagues to consider supporting this legislation, and this is consistent with the piece of legislation that was just moved to the third reading, and it would appropriate the sum of $25,000 from the initial savings realized in fiscal year 2015 pursuant to Public Law number 33-060, which is the refinancing of the 2007 and 2009 bonds, which was the government of Guam realized at $1.975 million in savings, of which $400,000 directly by that law, was received and transferred over to the Guam Economic Development Authority for their service in light of the refinancing. And it goes on to read, to the Department of Administration for the purpose of funding the fallen heroes monument to be erected by the fallen heroes of the Pacific Foundation. Madam Speaker, on July 30th, this body had received communication from the Chief Executive himself, in which we were considering in session at that point in time legislation that would have authorized the refinancing of the 2007 and 2009 bonds. As part of that communication, the Chief Executive, the Governor, sent over a proposed legislation that included authorizations that would address many of the appropriations that will be forthcoming, not only in this legislation, but in the next three legislative measures. And Madam Speaker, the authorization would have identified the application of the savings that are realized in fiscal year 15, not 16 and beyond, because 16 and beyond, the good chairman of the Healthcare Committee had proffered that those resources be set aside specifically to address capital improvement projects at Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. So, Madam Speaker, this is not old information in regards to the governor having endorsed these particular items. And if one of us is interested in the proposed legislation, it did enumerate the allocation through the savings for under 2015, $186,000 to DOA for Typhoon Halong, $150,000 to the Sinahanya Mayor's Office for the completion of the open-air gymnasium renovations and reconfiguration of the parking lot, the playground, and the renovation of the baseball field, $250,000 for the purposes of compensation to farmers for crop damages, of which that was already addressed by the chairman of appropriations in fiscal year 16 budget, $39,000 in the repair and upgrade of the Talafofo baseball field, $273,000 to DPW for the Umatic Bridge Towers renovation and upgrade, and then $100,000 to the Zonia Gymnasium, Zonia Mayor's Office for the repair of the Zonia Gym, and the remaining balance was going to be allocated elsewhere. Madam Speaker, this recognizes that there was going to be some savings realized. We did receive communication on September 17 during the public hearing on these particular measures. Specifically, I'll just allude to Bill 153, where statements were made by representatives from BBMR and representatives from DOA that alluded to the savings being realized. They also shared with us that at that public hearing that the savings per the public law should be allocated appropriately to GMH. Well, Madam Speaker, we just received, that's exactly what the law requires beginning fiscal year 16. But in the same token, there were still funds identified in unrealized savings, unanticipated revenues in fiscal year 15 as a result of the refinancing. So, Madam Speaker, to me, we received, or let me just also add that in the last couple of days, we received communication from the front office by Senator Chris Duenas, who alluded to tax refunds being paid as a result of the use of these proceeds. tax refunds being paid should always be a priority. I am not questioning that, and our people deserve to get their tax refunds at the earliest time possible within that 6-month time frame when the cash is available. There are already mechanisms in law that allow for that, Madam Speaker, so there's no need for me to venture into that because there's a requirement by law, and in every budget that sets aside proceeds that are generated by this government to address our people's money, and paying their tax refunds should always be a priority. Well, that communication shared with us that these cash savings were used for that particular purpose. I'm not refuting that. It's part of the tools and the mechanism that's available to the executive branch, and I commend them for paying that. But we just received a couple days ago, Madam Speaker, a financial statement that highlights reserve for contingencies, a balance of $11.4 million at the end of September, the end of the fiscal year. Just specifically, and I'm only going to highlight that particular account because the pieces of legislation that I have sponsored would allocate $587,000 for community projects. And this is one of them, for community projects. Projects that would be far-reaching in terms of benefiting our community. And I believe that based on cash management, as cash comes in during the course of the next several months, that $1.5 million that was realized and saved should be reimbursed and appropriately appropriated by this body. That is our job. That is our responsibility, Madam Speaker. Where we decide collectively as a majority in this body is ultimately the decision of this body. Well, we have this piece of legislation which is identifying that as a funding source. And the executive branch has every opportunity in the next several months to reimburse these particular savings that were used as part of the cash disbursement process, and then be consistent with the intent of this particular legislation. And that is to address, like I shared with you, community projects that are highlighted by this body. Madam Speaker, of the $587,000, and I'm going to say this now so that I can keep my comments in subsequent legislation to a minimum, but is asking our colleagues to recognize that those savings, once the executive branch is able to identify cash, should repay the use of those funds, those savings, so that they can be allocated accordingly by this body. The legislative measures would allocate, as highlighted in Bill 153, $25,000 as our contribution, the people of Guam's contribution, towards the construction of that monument for our fallen heroes and for their families. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, the subsequent legislation that would allocate $100,000 for the Doña Mayor's gym, to the Doña Mayor's office for the repair of the gym that went down in Typhoon Dolphin. Madam Speaker, one of our colleagues here had mentioned that he saw the major gap, the broken roof ceiling of that particular gymnasium not too long ago. And I'm glad that he had that opportunity to be able to visit that facility, because I'm hopeful that from his perspective, he would recognize that here's a community facility that was being very actively used every single day, inclusive of the evenings, Madam Speaker, and I physically have visited that facility when in fact it was being actively utilized by members of our community and island-wide.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
I was going to.
Madam Speaker, we are talking about
Yes.
Bill 153. Any subsequent bills can be addressed at that time.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm asking that we stay focused on the bill in front of us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So noted. And,
Thank you to
I
our
was
colleague
going-
for sharing that perspective. And I wanted to keep my comments for subsequent legislation
It's okay, you'll be
brief,
given an
but
opportunity
this
to
is
speak on
self-explanatory.
every single bill.
Madam Speaker, just going back to Bill number 153-33, it would allocate $25,000 out of the savings that was realized as a result of the refinancing of the 2007-2009 bonds. I ask our colleagues to please support this for the cause, but also to recognize our fallen heroes. And I ask the executive branch to please return or reimburse that fund, that savings account, so that in fact these particular provisions, should it be passed by this body, can be carried out. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. On the motion. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the motion? On 153. Any of the co-sponsors would like to speak on it? Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I attended the public hearing on this, and there is no doubt in my mind that this, along with even the subsequent bills that we will be hearing, that they're definitely worthwhile projects that we should invest in. However, this bill in particular, and those that follow, identify a funding source that is not there. And so it wouldn't make, I guess in my mind, there's a conflict. I like where this money is where they're proposing this money, the savings from the bonds, refinancing, where it's supposed to go. But in the end, we did get a letter that said that that money is no longer there. To then now appropriate money that is not there just doesn't make sense. Now, if you recall back to the budget cycle, when we were doing the 2016 fiscal year budget, we actually went very conservative on that one. We went about $40 million less than what the governor was proposing. And with the caveat by the chairman of the committee, who said that if we do start realizing revenues into the government that are going to go over and above what we appropriated, then we would then go into a supplemental budget. And that's the time that we'll then be able to do it. To me, I guess what I'm saying right now is that since it is being communicated to us from Adelup that there is no funds in this funding source, then perhaps we should wait to see if the revenues do start to increase over and above what this body has projected and has appropriated. And once we get to that level, that would probably be the most appropriate time to then appropriate funds for this project and others that's going to follow. But right now, Madam Speaker, to pass this bill without a funding source or a funding source that has no money in it just would not make any sense. And I just want to share that as my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And I can appreciate that, but I hope that you also would read in the committee report from BBMR that their own testimony, it says that these monies should be appropriated from the general fund.
And I can appreciate that, Madam Speaker, but that memo from BBMR, and that communication from BBMR went out prior to the latest information that we got, that there is no money. So back then, the money may have been there, but now it is no longer there. So then we can't just pass legislation that could be deemed an empty promise, at least for now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
But I think the question really there that we all should be asking is that if a previous law had said that it is to be appropriated, and to just arbitrarily take the cash out without the appropriation, which only this body can appropriate.
That is correct, Madam Speaker, and I will leave that to the leadership of this body to be able to follow that line to try to come to a conclusion. But until such time that we identify that there are any funds in this funding source that is identified in this bill and the bills after, right, then we are appropriating monies from no bank.
Just a point of information, at least from my perspective, Madam Speaker, is that there's a difference between fiscal management and fiscal responsibility. Fiscal management, the executive branch has the resources and the tools to be able to access cash so that they can take care of government obligations, inclusive of tax refunds. Fiscal responsibility, Madam Speaker, is the responsibility of the members of this body, extended to the executive branch, and we need to account for every single penny. If this was unanticipated revenues received during fiscal year 15, of which fiscal year 15 budget was sufficient, and we never heard any questions raised about whether in fact there were going to be issues with paying obligations, then this unanticipated additional savings should be reimbursed when the cash becomes available so that this body can appropriate it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
So is there anybody who would like to speak on the motion? Senator San Nicolas.
I agree with both of them, Madam Speaker. I actually rise first up before I speak on the measure. I would like to raise the point of inquiry. With appropriation measures, Madam Speaker, aren't we supposed to resolve into the committee of the whole and bring in the financial people to be able to answer any questions with respect to the validity of the appropriation and the availability of funds?
Yes, normally that would be, but that's always at the request of the body. But,
Right, and so,
because
Madam
this
Speaker,
is not a, how should I say that? I know it's an appropriations, but it.
Yeah, and so given the fact, Madam Speaker, that we have BB saying one thing in the committee report, a letter coming down from the governor's office on his letterhead saying something else, colleagues here wondering is the money there or isn't, and all of us wondering if they spent it under what authorization did they. I mean, all the questions are in place for us to really call them down here and have the answers either jive or not jive, but figure out who's telling the truth. Because if one or the other of the retiring speakers are correct, it really makes all the difference as to how we should determine whether or not these bills get passed or not. And if the administration is sending down conflicting messages, one from BBMR, one from the governor's office, if one is saying the money was spent and the other one is saying the money is available, and if one is saying we used it for refunds and the other one is saying no, you should have appropriated it, I think we need everybody who's sending all those mixed messages down to this body to come in here and answer the questions before all the members of this legislature. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Senator Munya Barnes.
I guess as a point of information, just based on the presentation and what we need to do as an August body, it is the responsibility of this August body to appropriate funds that are necessary. When a bill is introduced into legislation, there is a financial impact statement that gets sent back in. We are within well of our responsibility and our duty to present, as the good author has done so with the upcoming bills that are here. It is our responsibility to make those appropriations and show. So if I'm not mistaken, based on the information that we've received, it's this body who appropriates, and this is what we are going through right now. So I just want to make that clarification for the record. Whether or not what happens afterwards, we need to do our job here. And based on the information given, I think that the good author of this legislation has rightfully done so, and the magic number is to get 8 and above.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a brief recess. The legislature's back in session. We had that brief recess so that we will be able to, as a body, make some, to have that discussion and make a decision here. So at this point, then, I'm going to go ahead and stop where we're at with Bill 153 and recognize the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at this time, I move that we resolve into the Committee of the Whole for the purposes of bringing in agenda items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And all these agenda items and all these bills are relative to the same funding source. And so if the body will permit that all these bills go, namely Bill 153, Bill 154, Bill 155, Bill 156, Bill 157, Bill 182, and Bill 183 and they're all -33, that we resolve in the Committee of the Whole with the Appropriations Chairman being the Chairman of that Committee of the Whole, and that we leave it to the sponsors to invite the individuals who shall participate in this process, including the Governor's Fiscal Policy Team, Department of Administration, BBMR. We'll leave it to the sponsors to coordinate with the Chairman of Appropriations so that when we come back at 1 o'clock, the room will be set up and that the individuals hopefully will be here to participate on this particular issue. And so I make that motion at this time.
On that motion, no objections, or?
And then I move that we recess till 1
Yes, so we'll recess until 1 this afternoon, okay?